Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
Hi, everybody. This is Michael Horn coming to you once again, pertaining to the Billy Meier UFO contacts, ongoing in Switzerland for more than 72 years. Now, when I say something like that, UFO contacts ongoing in Switzerland more than 72 years, does that grab anybody? Is that something you might want to think about, let alone challenge or what have you? Today, I want to talk about something pertaining to reality and how we perceive it. I'm going to call this the how question, the how question. And this is to revisit what I have blogged about. Some time ago, I was blogging about the alien anything topic, the alien anything. And this how question is extremely important. It's really how we know things in life, how we come to determine and accept that things are true or not true. In the field of the overall paranormal UFOs, sometimes called ufology, many things seem to be taken for granted as being real. Now, in past shows, I've brought up the idea of considering how we determine as reasonable people, what the criteria for the truth is, how we go about setting up, examining something, and finding out if it's true or not. The UFO topics specifically, and to focus in on this element that we have only spoken about a little bit, so-called UFO alien abductions. I bring it up now because recently, as many of you now know, there's been a joint project in the works with MUFON, this international organization, to look into and investigate the Billy Meier case. I know the case is real. Many people have already gone, through all of the evidence and due diligence, decades worth of research, including my own, but it started off with the original investigators in this case, Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens, Lee and Britt Elders, people who went to Switzerland initially, did the hard work to bring this important information, this important story to the public. But since that time, when they were first doing this in the late 1970s, there's been a phenomenon that has gained traction. Indeed, it's gained a lot of traction in the minds of a lot of people, and that's alien abductions. When I put up a recent blog that I called Alien Anything, I copied over an email or two from a person who'd responded to my Alien Anything blog, really saying, well, how come I was being dismissive of all of these other cases in ufology and all of these things pertaining to the evil grays and alien abductions? And I, in one of these blogs, I raised the point. I said, how is it that we've come to accept a context, something as fact, that we are already ascribing, describing, attributing behaviors and motivations to creatures for which there is simply no empirical evidence that establishes their existence? Now, I've acknowledged in writing and in my interviews that the Roswell case from 1947 was real case. There were others that didn't even make the news, in which the United States and other military and government organizations and entities, no pun intended, investigated crashes of UFOs, at some of which the bodies of creatures were found. These creatures have come to be known as the Greys, but what is explained to us in the Meier material, that which has the greatest foundation, the greatest scientifically authenticated evidence for any UFO case, and indeed you could say for in many fields of science, is that these so-called Greys, these aliens discovered, were androids, highly technologically advanced robotic android beings. They were not extraterrestrials from another world. They were their creations. Look at some of the fantastic developments coming out of Japan on robotic and even near android type of creatures. And then fast forward that a few thousand years in technology, where an advanced race has created these beings that can be sent in highly developed, sophisticated craft throughout the universe on little fact-finding scientific information gathering missions. That's what was found. Those are the creatures that were found at Roswell and perhaps at some other places. Due to the clever machinations of intelligence agencies starting right here in the good old US of A, and going back to the late 40s and early 50s, when the government and military and intelligence agencies, even under the direction of their then President Roosevelt, determined that it was very necessary for the human beings, certainly of the US and the rest of the earth, to be terrified, to be made fearful of extraterrestrial life. At the highest levels of government and intelligence services, they knew that there were other beings existing in the universe, and that indeed, on some occasions, their craft had found their way here. And some small number of occasions had crashed here, and even smaller numbers of occasions, these androids had been found. The threat to governments, political entities, religions, and all other forms of terrestrial control that are loath to give up any of that control, these invested positions were understandably threatened by the knowledge, the factual knowledge, that we're not alone in the universe. And joyfully, we now have some of these kinds of life forms upon which to base these scary and fearful kinds of agendas that would find their way all the way here to this time, this day and age, amped up and ramped up through all of the means of technology and disinformation available to this lovely delusional alien abduction phenomenon. Even in the Meier material, it is acknowledged that there have been contact examinations of some very small number of human beings over the past 100 years by advanced extraterrestrials who, having the technological capability, took some people, subjected them to a form of deep hypnosis, blanked out memories to varying degrees of success. Maybe even that 1% where they weren't successful has led to some of this whole abduction phenomenon stuff. But basically, they examined human beings, they returned them, yes, in some cases, missing time, what have you. You now have an industry, a virtual industry, designed to terrify people that they're being floated through their walls and out of their beds and abducted wherever they are by these varying now forms. We have reptiles and insects and what have you, abducting and examining people and seemingly impregnating the women of Earth to carry forth alien hybrid human babies which have never been seen, found, photographed, analyzed, or anything else. But because we also are such overly entertained people, we crave distraction and entertainment to take us away from the drudgery and ever fearful realities of daily life. to get ourselves all worked up about alien abductions has become an industry, and it has become a preoccupation. It has become something that has swept over and taken over the consciousness of many, many, many people. And it's done it without putting on the table for real scientific examination any verifiable facts. Whoa, you're saying, what about all those alien implants and all of that hypnotic regression? I'm hearing that, right? First of all, let it be known that it's known that since the 70s at least, very small implantable chips, RFID, I think in some cases they're called, have been manufactured in the United States in huge numbers. That technology in the past 40 years has exponentially been advanced and perfected. Can you not imagine? That these kinds of tracking devices, and when I say these kinds, I'm talking about the known terrestrially manufactured ones, have been going on for at least since the 70s. We are told in the Meier material that experiments in cloning have gone on for at least 40 years in the US and other places. Cloning that has been to some degree working with genetic, but surgical and drug-altered humans that have been made to look like the so-called evil greys, staring at you with their big eyes. Do not underestimate that the agenda of those who want to control us is real, though it isn't always quite at the level of complexity and dimension that the conspiratorial mindset, that is also an industry in and of itself, promulgates and promotes and churns out, that everything is the evil agenda of the evil elite to control us and wipe everybody off the planet. During another presentation, we might discuss the realities of overpopulation, so you'll have something else to get excited about and worry about in the meantime. But for now, suffice it to say, we're going to look at the fact that there is no real verifiable evidence that aliens are implanting anybody. Now, you want to talk about the work of the late Roger Lear, a guy I knew just a little bit from this circuit in the UFO community industry. He pulled things out of people's bodies. To this day, there is not any conclusive evidence. He could not show that there was something of extraterrestrial manufacture among the things pulled out of people that gets lodged subcutaneously: pieces of wood, metal, glass, all sorts of little things that we pick up. Now, in the case that any of these things were deliberately implanted in anybody, since, and we've touched on this, any of the actual physical abductions, as well as mutilations of animals or people, are done by top secret military groups and not extraterrestrials, the implantation of devices, should they exist in people, are of those origins. And can we look no farther than the news reports that have already surfaced of implantations being offered and performed by different agencies or entities openly for this wonderful thing of making it easier for people, for you to get your gasoline or petrol or whatever you want to call it at the pump, for you to go in and entertain and get yourself soused at the local club or pub, for you to purchase things with a wave of your wrist. And this appeals to people. We have many people who cannot wait to be treated like farm creatures, who cannot wait to be chipped and blogged and logged and followed and have access to their every thought, impulse, movement, and everything else by a big brother type of government, which is developing overseas for me in Brussels, not too far probably for many of you, where Meier has long ago said the central computer will be located as the EU and the US start on their biometric chipping of human beings. He didn't mention in 1958, when he foretold this, foretelling specifically the EU, foretelling the EU by name, European Union, EU, that it would become a dictatorship to which people right now are willingly turning over their power. Have a nice day over there. That the EU and the US would be in cooperation, biometrically chipping people. Nowhere in all of Meier's vast hundreds and hundreds of specific prophetic and predictive statements is he warning us that our imminent danger is coming from evil aliens who are floating Aunt Edna and Uncle Fred out of their beds through the walls into their ships so they can examine them with their big bug eyes. Now, we'll talk a little bit about this, a little more about it, and where this is leading. We're going to talk about hypnotic regression as it plays its part or doesn't in this, and more features of it. It's very important that we delve into this a little more before we further explore the Meier case and its differences to all this material. So join me back in just a moment, please.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
Okay, so we have an entire industry that's basically centered around them scaring your pants off, if they're not already off, and making you fearful and delighted at the same time and distracted, and to take you away from the real concerns of the day, the concerns of what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Europe, Asia, the US, all over the place. So for a moment, let's touch on this idea of hypnotic regression that proves that aliens are abducting everybody and their brothers and sisters. You know, the Earth, there's a lineup of craft. They're lined up for light years, just waiting for their turn to come and pluck some folks, do their thing, stick them back and head off, and then watch the whole thing unfold on their big screens. Holographic, of course, they can move stuff around. Here's the problem. Hypnotic regression started to have its, let's say, big spike in interest pertaining to reincarnation. People were being regressed and describing their past lives. In fact, some people, a very small number, but some, came up with information that could be verified that this certain person lived and all the rest of this. If we go to the Meier material, and that is if we choose to go to the Meier material to get a different perspective on all this for consideration, we learn a few things. Number one, the actual number of people who can come into conscious contact or even hypnotic awareness of their past lives is well below the 0.00 something or other 1%. It's extremely rare. When someone comes up with information from a past life, either through regression or they're remembering, according to the information in the Meier case, and that is according to that information, we'll have to think it through ourselves. They're sometimes not even coming up with information that pertains to their own past life. And that's because, according to this information, everything about everybody who's ever lived, every thought, feeling, belief, emotion, action, you name it, is in fact stored, you might say etherically, in what they call the storage banks. It's been called erroneously the Akashic Records. Therein, in these storage banks, is retained in a, I guess we could say, a vibrational or frequency form, everything about any and everybody who's ever lived. There are a bare handful of people at any given time who have access consciously to be able to penetrate, to draw from, or get into, to utilize any of this information. When you have mediums who claim to be talking to the dead, first of all, we know that 99% of that is bogus. There are some people who tap into that information. They don't even know exactly how they're doing it, but they have, for whatever reason, an ability to hit those frequencies. They think they're speaking to the dearly departed and conversing with them, and they are not. This gets into the, talk about reincarnation and the nature of the incarnation of the spirit form, and information that's in the spiritual teaching, which is where we're ultimately driving our conversation. But to get to that more fully, we come in through these other doors of information in the Meier case. We open this to you to not tell you that this is fact, you've got to believe it. There's nothing to believe here whatsoever. If you go into this material and you do your own thinking, you will come away with your own conclusion. It may or may not, conform to my perspective, my conclusions, and that's fine. You at least have done the thinking. You're not in a religious state of mind. You're not in a belief, cultic, sectarian state of mind where you have to accept something. Your head is nodding simply because, well, what's in this book is true because this book says it's true. No. Yes, there's information published and in books, but it's a teaching. It's information. You have the responsibility. So we go to this question of reincarnation and past lives, and we'll come back to the alien abduction hypnosis premise in a second with it. All of this information that some people tap into, and when they think they're speaking to the dearly departed, what they've done is they've tapped into that frequency where, late Uncle Fred, who died of a heart attack after he'd gone through the wall and was abducted in the craft, is now wanting to talk to Johnny and tell him how much he loved him in real life and how he's watching over him and all the usual bilge that you get with this stuff. I'm sorry, I'm being hard about it because, folks, we're now in a time where these prophecies are unfolding. The prophecies and predictions in the Meier case daily, unrelentingly. All that's going on in the Middle East right now, Meier foretold it in 1987. He was also given that prophetic information himself, the warnings of this fundamentalism that's coming. It'll be 3 major religions and some others that come together during these times. He was told that back in 1953. It would come now. And in his own prophetic information, he tells about the warriors and fanatics of Islam who will reign for a long time. They will rage through Europe as well as the Middle East. There will be many things going on, and there are still many things that we who want to wake up to this are going to take responsibility in our own thinking, which is at the core of this teaching, which is at the core of cause and effect, which is the immutable law of this universe that cannot be dismissed and ignored except at our own peril, but that we can learn about, crash course in thinking, and then we start to learn how to creatively, constructively create the preferred realities we want, how to soften the blows, to avert some of this prophesied stuff that unfolds otherwise ceaselessly upon us. So if I'm harsh and I'm picking on some of our most sacred beliefs and sacred cows are getting gored and all, it's not to offend anybody. It's to say we are in this together. Nobody on the face of the earth is immune from the consequences of the laws of cause and effect. let alone of what would come if we allow a third world war, if we allow terrorism to run unabated through all the countries of Earth. How is this relating to this how question of eight? Follow me. So when someone taps into the information, the person is dead. They're gone. Their personality exists no more. We will get into that more in the spiritual teaching. But the frequency of that information is there. And when it's tapped into and someone can bring it forward authentically and accurately, it is as if in their mind and in the mind of the receiver, that it is Uncle Fred, or it is cousin so-and-so, or it's Abraham Lincoln, or whatever. When we die, folks, we don't know any more than the last moment, that which we knew at the last moment of our lives. We can't counsel anybody any further. This is, again, something you're going to have to think through. There is information that people can bring through, and sometimes there is accurate information that can go beyond what we're hopeful about or what we know. But let's start a little bit now. We've talked about that people can sometimes tap into it. Meier's explained that sometimes people accidentally tap into other past life for someone else. And even if in the rarest of cases they can tap into it for themselves, they can then come forward with, well, I was buried here, I lived this life. There's some stories, there's children who come forward with some amazing stuff. There's some fairly recent stuff that's been on the internet about a couple of young people, and the information was accurate. And one young guy, I think he was an American, and he met some of the people who were now older military people in the squadron that he was in when he was shot down during the World War. It's mind-blowing stuff. Okay, what are we going to do with it? We want to learn how this really works. So now we find out through the Meier material that to regress people for their past lives is completely ineffective. If they're going to get any accurate past life information, it's maybe more like spontaneous in terms of being for themselves. And you're going to have the filtering and the influences consciously and unconsciously that the person themselves may bring to the table, no pun intended, table or couch, that the therapist will bring into it, that we will have from the mass consciousness now with this worldwide expectation for more information of past life regression, more information of alien abduction. It's transferred over into this alien abduction thing where the expectations are huge, where phenomenon that is otherwise explainable, such as sleep paralysis, imagination, fantasy, wishful thinking, fearful dreams, projections, dissatisfaction with current life, and the influence of all this gunk and goop that's pumped out endlessly. Bug-eyed aliens are abducting you. That gets in there. Think about this for 1 second. If you don't think that that's possible, think about this. We all go to sleep at night, and everybody, whether we remember it or not, we have dreams. Everybody knows that at some point in life, whether they're remembering them or not now, that you know you've had some pretty spectacular dreams, for better or for worse, right? Now, in those dreams, you, some part of you, your consciousness, has created realities and universes and beings and interactions and scenarios that you cannot create during your waking consciousness. Sitting here, eyes open or closed, if you try as best you can to have something that runs as seemingly long as some of your dreams do, with all that detail and richness and emotion, you can't do it, because there are parts of us, and this is also explained in the Meier material, subconscious, unconscious, psyche, what have you, that contribute to levels of consciousness that go on in us that are not, for the majority of us, immediately accessible to us consciously. So we are also vulnerable to taking in and unconsciously nurturing all sorts of stuff. And in our virtual world, bombarded through every device and online, we're getting this 24/7. And while we're sleeping, sometimes someone in the next room. This is in the airwaves and in the ethers. So suddenly, we now believe, and we get regressed to believe, we've been abducted, and how conveniently it fits so many of these pictures, literally, that are given to us. And we have created all of this stuff. We have a whole new cutesy terminology, experiencers. Now, I got in a lot of trouble in my blog with this one guy because I said, look, how come the president or premier or prime minister of your country, Supreme Court justices, Congress people, senators, members of parliament, governors of states, mayors of dog catchers, nobody's contacted you because you're so valuable that it would equate that the next step is that someone from outer space has to abduct you. And your genetic material, you mean your unfortunately relatively short lifespan, if we're lucky to 100 years, usually 70 to 85 or whatever, in the best of that stuff is valuable to people that live hundreds of years. In the course of their development, flying through space, they had to develop long lifespans. Our short lifespans, our crazy emotions, oh, they need our feelings and emotions, all of which are ruled by violence and aggression, if you look around. There's no logic whatsoever. There's no science to this. Now, you don't have to believe this point of view. You don't have to say, well, obviously, but you would have to, if you're a reasonable person who comes up with reasonable criteria to determine the truth, you're going to have to take a look at this whole industry with its television shows and unrelenting films and blogs and websites telling you that aliens are here and all of the rest of the stuff, while you and I are living in a world that is slowly, and in some cases rapidly, disintegrating environmentally, socially, in every way possible, and it's our responsibility. I'm telling you, as somebody who spent over 35 years researching UFOs and concluded that there's a real UFO case here, and all of the evidence is really freely available for you to partake of it, I'm telling you, you're being sold a big, bad bag of goods, and your pockets are being picked, your mind is being, polluted with this stuff, and now is the time for you to challenge this and to challenge me, if you will, challenge the Meier material. Let's get on the same page with each other and let's take some control over our own personal lives and make this, quite frankly, a much better place to live than it has been up until now. See you next time.